welcome back to my channel. If you're new, my name is Landry, and I started a new series on my channel where each week I talk all things Best Medicine. If you're not sure what Best Medicine is, it is a new TV series on Fox that is an American spinoff of a beloved British series called Doc Martin. Doc Martin was on the air for 18 years in the UK and later came to an end in 2022 when they decided that they were finished and in love with the TV series, that they decided it was time to bring it to a close. I did not get to see Doc Martin when it was being made in real time. I did not come across the show until 2024 and immediately became a huge Doc Martin fan and have since watched the series through 3 times. So when I found out that Fox was making an American adaptation to the beloved TV show, I decided that I wanted to watch it right away, and I immediately became a fan of Best Medicine and decided that each week I wanted to do a little review / recap and kind of share my thoughts on each episode. So I do want to say that if you have not seen the recent episode of Best Medicine, we're on episode 6 now. You may not want to watch this video until afterwards because there will be a lot of spoilers. Because I dig really deep into each episode. And if you're just now jumping on board to this series, if you're curious to see my thoughts from all the way to the beginning of episode 1 to now, there's a playlist on my channel where I put together all the episodes that I've filmed so far. With that being said, if you have seen Best Medicine and you've watched the recent episode and you're curious what I'm thinking and my thoughts about this episode, come on, let's talk about it. So first off, I think that we need to do a little recap of last week's episode. With it being kind of halfway through the season, a lot has happened. There are going to be 13 episodes of season 1, and we are just finished episode 6, and we're going to episode 7. So it feels like time is going by so fast. I mean, I'm enjoying every episode every week, and I just get excited each week that we get to see more and more. And then also, I'm loving making these videos. I get excited every time I watch that the next day Wednesdays are my recording days of making these reaction videos, and I just get excited every week when it comes to Wednesday that I get to share my thoughts with you guys, because I'm really enjoying this show, and I just love hearing everybody's opinions and thoughts as not just a Best Medicine viewer, but as a Doc Martin fan. So, with that being said, let's do a recap of last week's episode 5. That episode was when we met Joe, the electrician, the guy that resets the power grid. And of course, we see that Dr. Best, Martin, had all the town come to him basically in a panic. It was Greg, George, Bert, and Aunt Sarah asked him to go talk to Joe because he was off of his medication. And it was kind of the doc's fault that he didn't let them explain to him what Joe's medical past history was. So he kind of went there not knowing anything about this guy and ended up making Joe upset because Joe just wanted somebody to talk to, and it turned out that the previous doctor, Dr. Reese, had like more than a doctor just prescribing him stuff and prescriptions and then leaving. He actually took the time to spend time with Joe, which made Joe feel a little bit better, because it seems like Joe was a depressed person that is lonely. And at first, Dr. Best didn't see that. So we had that whole conflict of the power. Joe doesn't go reset the power grid, so therefore the town goes completely blacked out. And they all blame Martin, Dr. Best, because he didn't fix Joe. So we had the town against him for that. And he was the only house / doctor's office in the whole entire town that had a generator, so everybody was using his personal space for their own electronics, not conserving the power, which made him upset. We also got to see that Sheriff Mark and Louisa were having kind of it was kind of an awkward reaction, like talking back and conversation between each other, because, we've learned way back in the beginning of the season that Louisa and Mark were going to get married. Louisa calls off the wedding, and so it's hit Mark very hard. So it's been very awkward for them to talk. And Louisa wants to be friends with Mark, but Mark didn't want to be in the friend zone. He still was kind of bitter, but in the right way. I mean, he just had his heart broken before he was going to get married, so it's understandable. But you see that Louisa and Mark are kind of doing the same things they've done in the past when they were together, like the caring of checking on their neighbors, the karaoke scene. And then we finally see that at the end of the episode, Mark kind of spills out his feelings to Louisa, and it was a good therapeutic moment where maybe they can move on and now be friends. So we will see about that. And we also saw the Dr. Best and Peter Kronk kind of get in a relationship, relatable to each other. Dr. Best, when he goes to help Peter Kronk because he got the apple stuck in his mouth because he was showing off to the school kids, we see a side of Martin, Dr. Best, that maybe he relates to Peter because he was treated the same way, because he tells Peter not to go out of the way of making friends and that it's okay to be lonely pretty much. And then, that kind of makes Louisa upset because he talked to an 8-year-old like that, but he doesn't see anything wrong with it. He thinks that it was great advice because he wished he was told that at that age. So we learned that maybe he had it rough growing up like Peter does. And, but we do see at the end of the episode him apologizing to Peter and them having like a little connection, like bond with the telescope, and looking at the lonely planet, which at the end of the episode, Martin, Dr. Best, says, well, maybe it's not as lonely after all because there was another planet close to it. And then another thing is another fun fact of last week's episode was we got to see that Peter names the dog Copernicus, which I'm hoping that the name sticks, and I was so happy that finally it got a name after so many episodes, so we will see. And the fact that another key part of last week's episode, the fact that the whole town wants Sheriff Mark and Louisa to get back together. They're kind of like saying they're such a good couple and stuff like that instead of letting them move on is kind of a conflict. And, Aunt Sarah even makes the comment, well, yes, they are cute together, but maybe there's someone out there for both of them, meaning that maybe it's not to be, that they need to let them move on and heal. So we will see. So that was a little recap of episode 5, and let's dig into episode 6. It was very blue, this episode. No pun intended. This was the Blueberry Festival of Portland. That was the main theme of this episode. What I love seeing is we're getting to see what Portland is all about. I mean, it's just a small town that has all these fun festivities. I mean, we saw the baked bean supper. We see the town coming together for baseball, the high school baseball teams. We see Blaze Day is a day every year where the ladies get together to see this attractive survival guide teach them how to survive when they get lost and stuff like that, which was hilarious. And then we see that despite there being a town blackout in episode 5 last week, they formed together to make the best of things by having a potluck during the blackout and karaoke night. So this town is a close-knit town, and these festivities mean the world to them. So first of all, we don't skip a beat. We jumped right into the episode, and poor old Dr. Best is getting attacked by those teenagers, shooting blueberries. So instead of spitballs, it was blueberry balls were being shot at him through straws as he's trying to get his groceries out the car. And I'm like, I feel so bad for him. I mean, he cannot catch a break with these teenagers. In episode 4, the Blaze Day episode, they threw up all over his shoes. Now, this episode, they don't skip a beat. They're shooting blueberries at him through straws. And, he's just trying to get his groceries in the house, and he's running for his life. He's losing his produce, and I felt so bad for him. And he immediately gets into his house, closes the door, and the first thing he says is, "Elaine, I've been attacked by a gang of lunatics which are shooting blueberries at me." And Elaine, of course, is being Elaine. This week, Elaine is shocker, shocker on her phone, which I'm not surprised about that. But this week, it seems that Elaine is trying to be a reporter because she is practicing in her reporter tone different things because, she's on her phone being the reporter, and she's like, "Oh, really?" And then she wants to interview him about being the attack, and, he's already annoyed. When is he not annoyed? I mean, there has been a reoccurrence. At this point, you would think she would know that he doesn't like her being on her phone and doing these shenanigans because he gets really, not upset, but, aggravated in the small things he says to her. Like, whenever she says, "Oh, you were," and she wants to, record him, he doesn't even skip a beat. He says, "We don't have time for this. We have a packed schedule." And he's like, "I need you to secure the premises," meaning he doesn't have time for all these games that everybody's trying to play. He wants to get straight to doctoring, and he doesn't know but this week is the Blueberry Festival in Port Wynne. And clearly he has no clue what's going on, and Elaine makes it sound like he's supposed to know what's going on, which I think by now the town needs to, number one, realize he doesn't know what any of these things are, because he didn't know what the baked bean supper was, he didn't know the baseball thing, he didn't know what Blaze Day was, and now he doesn't know what the Blueberry Festival. Not to mention, have they not realized by now that he does not care what happens in that town? All he cares about is the health and well-being of the citizens of Port Wynne? Clearly they don't, and I just find that so funny. So right off the bat, he's like, "Blueberry I don't know what you're talking about." And that's when we quickly see that is what is on everybody's minds, is that there is going to be a Blueberry Festival this weekend. Because he's seen 3 patients so far. The first one, all she wants to do is talk about the Blueberry Festival. He gets mad at her, and he's like, "Stop talking and open your mouth." He doesn't care. The second one wants to stomp in blueberries for the weekend, and he's like, "No, you're not doing that with foot fungus." So there's that. Then the third lady's allergic to blueberries. She wants to know if he can give her a prescription so she can eat blueberries, and he said, "Absolutely." Then she said, "Really?" He says, "Absolutely not," which was hilarious, and tells her to get out. So everybody is obsessed with this Blueberry Festival, which is so funny. And then you have immediately, he's ready to see his next patient, and there is nobody in the waiting room whatsoever. And he has no clue what's going on. And, it's back to it's the Blueberry Festival, Doc. Elaine's like, "Nobody's going to come in for a doctor's appointment on a Friday afternoon with the Blueberry Festival getting ready to go on." And then we find out that Aunt Sarah happens to be one of the people that is not coming in for their physical checkup, which makes Martin, Dr. Best, upset. So there's that. And then immediately he gets thrown the news that he is going to be a judge for the blueberry pie contest, which he immediately says no to, which I'm not surprised by now, and I don't know why Elaine is surprised that he says no. I mean, she's like, "Well, Dr. Reese used to be the judge." And, he's like, "Well, I'm not Dr. Reese." I'm like, once again, do they not realize that Martin, Dr. Best, does not really care what Dr. Reese did when he was the doctor? I mean, it's been shown throughout all these past episodes, the fact that they were like, "Well, Dr. Reese did this in last week's episode." And he's like, "Well, I'm not Dr. Reese." He's clearly telling them that he doesn't care how the old doctor did things. He has his own way of doing things, and they need to just appreciate that. But clearly, they just aren't getting it. So now it looks like Dr. Best is going to be a pie judge. Time will tell. So immediately we see him storming out of the doctor's office, and he's going down the street, and it doesn't catch a beat, skip a beat, Bert immediately runs into him and he's like, "Hey, Judge Martin," and puts the ribbon on his coat, which was so funny. They are keen that he is going to be the judge, whether he likes it or not. And, Dr. Best, being Dr. Best, immediately takes it off and throws it on the street, which was so funny, and keeps walking, doesn't care. And then Copernicus the dog, which they didn't refer to the dog by name this week, but I'm just going to say Copernicus since we found out that's what Peter wanted to name him. So it was so cute that Copernicus the dog picks up the ribbon and is chasing Martin with it, trying to give it back to him. And, he's like, "Go away. That's not mine." Trying to get the dog to go away. He clearly is not going to be the judge, whether they like it or not. And then while all of this is going on, we see that clearly something's wrong with Sheriff Mark. Something going on with his eyes. I thought maybe it was allergies. I wasn't too sure, but clearly he needs to go see the doc because something's not right with him. His eyes are all red and crusty and just, he's not okay. So while all that's going on, we see that they're setting up for the Blueberry Festival. While all that's going on, what does Dr. Best do? Dr. Best does what he does, and he goes to visit Aunt Sarah pretty much because she didn't come in for her appointment. And of course, along the way, as he's headed to Aunt Sarah's house, he meets an interesting character that is somebody that comes to the Blueberry Festival every year, Mr. Blueberry himself. And this guy is like all blue, and immediately Martin's like, "Well, you take this very seriously, don't you?" And he's like, "Well, I am, the Blueberry mascot or whatever, this guy." And he's like, "So does the paint not bother you?" That's what Martin thinks. He's wearing, face paint and all over his body. And he's like, "No, this isn't paint," which immediately, Martin's like, "Really?" And, that immediately it's like something's going on in Dr. Best's head. He's like, "Oh, then there must be something wrong with this guy because he's blue, and he thinks that because he ate blueberries, it turned him this way." So, curious to see what he is going to do throughout this episode about Mr. Blueberry, since, when he sees a medical problem, he wants to fix it, whether it makes the town mad or not. So, there's that. So now we're to Martin visiting Aunt Sarah. And, she's all excited. She thinks he's came to eat lunch with her. And, he doesn't skip a beat. The pleasure tease, he's like, "I'm not here to eat supper. I'm not here to eat lunch." And she's like, "Oh, good. So it's just a social visit." He's like, "I'm not here for a social visit. I'm here to give you a checkup." And she's like, "What are you talking about?" He's like, "Well, you haven't been here. You haven't had a checkup for 3 years." And, he's just being Dr. Best, concerned because he wants everybody to be healthy and well. And he is just fussing at her because she has not been in for an appointment and that she neglected to go see him. And, she's not having it. She's like, "You're not examining me in my kitchen. If you think that's the case, then you have another one coming to you." And one of my favorite lines she said was, "If you think that I'm going to allow you to examine me in my own kitchen, then I'm going to have to fillet you with my boning knife." And I just thought that was so funny. That's just Aunt Sarah's character right there. She's very annoyed with Martin, and I don't think he realizes that, how annoyed she is with him. In his mind, he's like, "I don't see what the problem is. I came out of my way, like, I'm not complaining. I came to check on you, and I just want to help you to make sure you're okay." And she just doesn't see it that way. She just wants to have a nephew and aunt time because it's been so long since she's seen him. She watched him when he was younger, when he came to stay with her. They got to spend a lot of time together, and as he got older and he moved away, it sounds like he didn't really communicate with her much. Other than sending a Christmas card every year, they didn't really have much communication. So whenever he moved back here to Portland, she's very happy to see him, and she just wants to spend time with her nephew. And I think he just has that doctor mode on again. And then, he's looking at her prescription bottles as he's washing his hands in the sink, and he realizes that she has so many medications. And, she's like, well, yeah, it's for my high blood pressure, and it's for my, what was the other? Oh, osteoporosis. He's like, yeah, osteoporosis. And his response, you're a ticking time bomb, because she has all these little medical issues that she's taking medicine for, and he's like upset with her because she hasn't came in for a checkup in so many years. And he immediately tells her that he could put her on a new prescription, and she gets into it with him, explaining why the medicine she's on and why she's taking them and the side effects. And he's just like, well, yeah, but if you take this new medication, it could really help you. And she finally just has it with him, and she tells him to get out, because if he's not going to eat lunch with her and just be a doctor for this time that she wanted to have personal time with, then he can just leave, which was so funny. And, the comment at the end whenever she was like, this fried fish is delicious, because he makes the comment that she needs to quit eating fried food because it's bad for her heart, and she needs to eat more greens, and she needs to exercise more. The two of them, it was just hilarious, the banter between each other, because he doesn't see what's wrong with him being concerned for his aunt when she just clearly wants to have lunchtime with her nephew. So all that happened, and clearly Aunt Sarah is upset with Martin, Dr. Best, because of his clear intentions of being thoughtful and caring about her, but she just is annoyed that it was at the wrong place. She just wanted to have personal time. So clearly he's having to go find somewhere else to eat lunch, because she basically kicked him out because he made her upset. And clearly everyone is excited about this Blueberry Festival, because everybody that has found out that Martin, Dr. Best, is going to be a judge is coming up to him in the streets, asking him all these questions. What do you like in your blueberry pies? Like, what's your favorite ingredient? Just so many questions. Do these blueberries look like they're ripe enough? And clearly he does not care. And it was funny because the first thing he says is, you lost me at judge, because they were saying, Judge Martin, Judge Martin. He's like, I am not going to be the judge for your blueberry pie eating or blueberry pie contest, which is so hilarious. That they just didn't catch on that he is not doing it. And he finally nips it when he stops in the middle of the street, and he says, let's make this clear. I do not care about the Blueberry Festival. All I care is about the health and well-being of the town, and I am not going to be a judge. And then he just walks away. And, even Louisa, of all people, was into the blueberry pie contest and was asking him questions. And, immediately he is like, not you too. And she's like, yeah, I'm going to be in it. And she's asking him about, I think it was Ginger, asking him if Ginger would be the perfect. No, first it was, how do you feel about cinnamon? And he's like, I'm scared to ask. And then he realizes she's talking about baking. And then she says, how about Ginger? And, he gets annoyed that she even wants to ask him questions about blueberries. He's just annoyed altogether. And then the fact that at the end, when he's getting ready to say, I don't care, he gets shot at with a spitball blueberry again by one of the teenagers, which was just like perfect comedic effect. And that was that. Poor Martin is being followed by the town because they are very obsessed with this blueberry pie contest. So now, finally, Dr. Best has gotten away from the crazy townspeople that are obsessed with their blueberry pies, and he's decided to sit down for a little lunch at the Salty Breeze, which immediately is not the case, unfortunately. It seems like everything that's on the menu is not available for whatever reason. At first, I'm like, okay, are they holding it against him because he's not going to be the judge? But then we later learned that no, that's not the case. So the first thing he wants is a garden salad, and George is like, no, sorry, that's not available today. Then he's like, okay, then I'll have the steamed fish. He's like, also not available today. And then he's like, okay, I'll have the shepherd's pie. And he's like, also not available today. And finally, the doc's getting really aggravated. He's like, okay, then what is available? And then George is like, we have Greg in the kitchen. That's what's available. Turns out that it sounds like Greg is just as obsessed with the blueberry pie contest as everyone else in the town. It seems like every year Greg tries to bake, and it doesn't really go to plan. So he kind of gets George kicked out of the kitchen, where George can't fix food for the customers because Greg is all in the kitchen basically trying to make a pie. Which, in my opinion, I'm like, okay, if this happens every year and you can't fix food, why don't you close for the day? Because, there's nothing for you to serve your customers. It's a waste of time, pretty much. Because Greg's in the kitchen having a nervous breakdown trying to bake a pie. And we see that because Greg's all mad because his pie burnt or something. I can't remember exactly. And George is like, yeah, I am a judge for this contest, so I can't get involved, so therefore I can't be in the kitchen watching over him or whatever. And finally, Dr. Best is like, okay, then what is there to eat? And George is like, I think there's some leftover tuna salad in the freezer. And Martin, I hate mayonnaise. And George is like, well, beggars can't be choosers. In other words, it's like, if you're going to eat here, you're going to have to eat tuna salad or nothing, because that's all we have. Greg's in the kitchen making pies, or trying to make pies, and we just have no food today. So, it looks like Dr. Best is going to be eating tuna salad whether he likes it or not. And of course, Blueberry, or his name's Barry, but they were calling him Blueberry, is there. And he's talking about how he loves tuna salad. And, immediately Martin, Dr. Best being Dr. Best, is like, so, you're blue, right? And, he's trying to, learn a little bit more about this guy because he knows that this isn't okay. He's not supposed to be blue. And immediately that conversation gets interrupted because there is a huge crash sound on the street. And who is it? Oh, the sheriff, Mark, has crashed his patrol car into the produce truck that was delivering, looked like produce to maybe the Salty Breeze. We're not too sure. And it sounds like Mark's eyes were giving him a fit. They were swollen shut. He couldn't see, and he just immediately ran into the truck. And it's like, why were you driving? It's just ironic of him being a police officer that is supposed to be making sure the town is safe, and he goes and gets himself in a car accident because he can't see to drive because of his eye problems. And, immediately Dr. Best goes running to the scene to see if they're okay, and he's trying to look at Mark's eyes, and Mark is like, I'm okay, and he's like, the funny line, but let's banter between the two. I love the dynamic conflict between the doc and the sheriff. It's just hilarious to me. He's like, why don't you let me stick to doing the diagnosing while you continue to be the idiot or whatever. I think that's how it was. And Mark's like, fair enough, or something like that. And I was like, that is just so funny. From day one when Martin has came to the town, the sheriff has just annoyed him because he wants to be friends with him, and he just doesn't want to be friends. And it's just so funny, like the banter between each other is just hilarious. So immediately we see that Mark is going to we're going to have to see what's going on with Mark's eyes. And it was so funny. Dr. Best was like, okay, come on, Mark. And he's going the opposite direction. And I'm like, he can't see. He doesn't know what direction he's going in. And the fact, he's like, the other way, Mark. And he goes walking, and he runs into the car. And finally, the doctor grabs him by the arm and is like walking him to the doctor's office. I'm like, he can't see. why do you think he ran his car into the truck? It was just so funny. And then I was shocked by what was wrong with Mark's eyes. I thought for sure it was going to be some kind of allergic reaction. I mean, it seems like everybody had something going on with the blueberries affecting them. The woman can't eat blueberries because she's allergic to them. So I thought maybe, blueberries, he's allergic to blueberries and every year he gets an allergic reaction, but no, that was not the case. First of all, before we get into that, it was sweet to see Al was helping Elaine prepare for her podcast reporting job that she's going to be doing at the Blueberry Festival. He's holding the camera and seems like they're really connecting with each other, which I was really hoping for, from the start. I want them to get together. I think they'd be a cute couple. And right away, it seems like they're having a good time. And, everybody's upset with him because Martin's not going to be the judge for the Blueberry contest. They're like, they've gotten Bert to be the new judge. And Martin does not really care. At this point, he's concerned about Mark's eyesight. And even Al's like, you made a mistake. You can't let my dad be a judge. That's just not okay, which I thought was so funny. So we quickly learn that Mark's eye problems is due to having Reiter's syndrome, which I did not see that coming, but it kind of makes sense. And the comment he had, I haven't written a thing all week except a ticket and in my dream journal, thinking that Reiter's syndrome means that something to do with writing. And, quickly the doc is very annoyed. And he's like, not Reiter's syndrome. He's trying to explain the spelling. He's like, it means that you have an untreated disease or whatever that these symptoms come across because this disease wasn't treated. It was chlamydia. And immediately Mark starts freaking out. He's like, no, not the chlamydia. And he's like, yes, the chlamydia. And he's like, but don't worry, it's treatable. He's given this antibiotic treatment. But in Mark's eyes, he is no pun intended, he is quickly freaking out because the doc is like, you need to immediately contact every person that you've been in contact with since the diagnosis or whatever, or since the symptoms. And he immediately freaks out. And the doc's like, Dr. Best is like, how many girls have you been with? And he's like, well, 1. Okay, 2. Okay, 4. Okay, 8. And then what cracked me up is immediately Elaine and Al, they're outside the waiting room, outside the door. They're not really supposed to be listening to the conversation. And they're like naming off all the girls that he's been with. And I'm like, oh snap. I did not see that coming, but it kind of makes sense. See in episode 2 where he comes in wanting the pill, and he's like, I'm done being the nice guy. I'm going to be the bad guy now. And I didn't think he was serious. I mean, I thought the only person he was with other than Louisa, was the teacher's assistant. But clearly I was wrong about that, so it sounds like there was a lot more girls. And yeah, the fact that he has to tell all of these girls that he may have infected them, he is not looking forward to. And on top of that, he now has to go to the pharmacy to see the pharmacist, which is his mother, and get a prescription for this. And he's like freaking out because he doesn't want his mom of all people to know this, which I think is so hilarious that the doc doesn't see that. He's like, you mean I have to go take this and get a prescription? And he's like, well, yeah, it's pretty self-explanatory. It's easy to manage. And Mark's like, oh. And it's like, I'm like, the doc doesn't understand that. He doesn't want to go see his mom because she's going to find out that he has chlamydia. And it's just so funny. And then the fact that Al was like, oh, somebody's got to see their mommy to get their prescription, immediately Mark's like, thanks a lot, Al, or whatever. It was just so funny. And like I said, I just did not see that coming whatsoever, that he was going to become in this situation. But yeah, what a turning point. I really did think it was just allergies. So we have that going on. Mark's little medical issue. And while all of this is going on, I do want to point out that I think that I was a little surprised how Dr. Best reacted when Elaine and Al were chiming in about all the girls that Mark was seeing. You know, they were naming out. I thought, I mean, he does go and bang the door, telling them to basically go away because they're not supposed to be listening to that conversation. But I feel like I thought he would have, like, opened the door and started yelling at them, maybe, because he seems like he gets annoyed if people interrupt him. But that was not the case, which I was a little surprised about that. And you know, I understand Elaine being nosy, but I was a little surprised by Al being nosy. But yeah, I was a little annoyed about that, them listening into the conversation. It's like, how many other conversations, medical conversations, have they been nosy and listened to? And that's not okay. I mean, immediately Elaine would probably, in real life, you would lose your job just like that because that's unprofessionalism. But of course, you know, different situation because Elaine knows about the doc's blood phobia thing, so that's kind of why she's still around. But yeah, that was a very interesting scene, unraveling of Mark and his medical diagnosis. So now we have the doc going around town, um, I guess just trying to find something to eat because, you know, you see him going to a food stand, which now that I think about it, it probably does make sense. I mean, he got interrupted by lunch, you know, Aunt Sarah kicked him out for lunch. Then he tried to eat at the Salty Breeze, and then Mark had the accident, so he hasn't gotten to eat anything today, pretty much. So, of course, the funny thing is, it's the Blueberry Festival, so everything has to do with blueberries, and he gets like was it a chicken skewer, chicken wing? I'm not sure what it was, but the guy was trying to put blueberry sauce on it, and the doc's like, no, 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 thank you, which was so funny. And immediately, you see the Dr. Best, get very interested in the blueberry guy because he's at the trash can and he's like rubbing his hands. He's doing something, and it's immediately sparked the doc's interest because he didn't get to have the full conversation he wanted to have with him at the Salty Breeze because he got interrupted. And quickly, Bert starts talking to the doc, and you know, it's so funny because Bert's like, yeah, I'm the new judge now, and he clearly doesn't. What cracks me up is you have all these people in the town coming up to Bert being nice to him. You know, he's got a free oil change, he had got a free coffee. All these people are basically buttering up Bert so that he will pick their pie as the best pie, which is so funny to me. And, you know, the doc is like listening to Bert, but not listening to Bert because he's really paying attention to this Barry guy. And, you know, finally Bert's like, oh, Barry, yeah, he's been like that. He had a medical condition. He's really changed since high school. He was very scary looking back then. And, you know, that immediately perks the doc's curiosity. He's like, oh, really? And he's like, yeah, he was known as Scary Barry in high school. You know, Irma went to the prom with him or whatever. And, I'm pretty sure they went to the school or something like that. And then, he's like, so yeah, don't bother him, Doc. He's been like that. He's fine. And, you know, it was so funny because the doc was like, yeah, but I don't care what anybody says. You can't, just because you eat so many blueberries doesn't mean that it will turn you blue. And then Bert, his comment, well, I turned orange when I was on that carrot diet. And then immediately the doc's like, well, that's not the same, Bert. And then, quickly, their conversation gets interrupted because Bert's car is ready to be, taken care of. The oil had been changed or whatever. And then the sad thing is, the doc hasn't ate all day, and what's Bert do? He takes his chicken wing or whatever it was from him. And I'm like, really? Like, he just can't catch a break. And, immediately I'm like, okay, what's he going to do? Is he going to go talk to this Barry guy? Because clearly it's bothering him that, he's blue and nobody sees a problem with him being blue. So I was curious about that, but quickly it turns because Louisa stops him to apologize to him for being so adamant about this blueberry pie contest. And Martin being Martin, his tone kind of changes because it's Louisa, and you can tell that he has feelings for Louisa, and he's like, oh, so about this this blueberry pie contest, what is so special about this festival? And, he's genuinely asking her a question, and she's explaining to him that, it's just been a town tradition, and the reason the pie contest is so special to her is because for the first time, she's not with Mark, they're not together, therefore she's able to not have the expectations of being in third place because of her future mother-in-law, meaning Sally would have been her mother-in-law, who always gets second place. And Louisa really wants to prove that she can she can do good in making pies, and she feels like she's kind of not an outsider, but she's labeled in the town as being the heartbreaker, breaking Mark's heart. And she's explaining to him, Martin, that everybody seems to have a label in this town. She even calls him the Grump, which I don't think he catches that, because he immediately is like, or if he does, he doesn't let that bother him. And he's like, okay, so if that's the case, what are you labeled as? And that's when she says, I'm labeled as the heartbreaker. And I think he kind of had a slight mood change or tone, because he went, like that. Like, you can tell that he's really listening to her. And then he messes it up like he always does, because he says, I thought he was coming along with the idea. He's like, yeah, I guess I can see the importance of this for the town. It might seem like a waste of time and too sugary, poor diet making, and this, and I don't know exactly how he quoted it, but at the end he says, but I can see how this could help put everybody's minds off of their problems, so they have something to enjoy in this small dead-end pathetic town, or something like that. And immediately, he said the wrong thing. Louisa gets upset with him, and she's like, well, I'm sorry that you see it as a this and that, or a pathetic, dead-end town, but this really means the world to me. I want to prove to myself that I can do, and she immediately storms away. And, clearly he's like, what did I say? Or, I did it again. Something, the facial expressions just told that he knows he's messed up once again. He was being Martin. That's how Martin is. He can't seem to say the right things because he's not made for small talk. He doesn't seem to care. In other situations, he wouldn't care what came out of his mouth. He just says what he's on his mind. But with Louisa, he feels a little bit differently because he really has feelings for her, I think. And I think it really does hurt him a little bit when he's like, oh, I said the wrong thing again. Oh, boy. And so that's that. And then we immediately see him storm back to the doctor's office because he has got to find out what's wrong with this Barry guy. It is bothering him. He's looking for medical records, and clearly there's no medical records because Elaine tells him that he was never a patient there. He was a patient at the town over. But she does give him a little insight that he must have had acne or whatever as a high schooler, because he went on the prom date with Irma, and Irma told her this or whatever, the town gossip. And another thing that's funny is while all of this is going on, Elaine is taking over the doctor's office with clothes, planning for this podcast. And I think it's so funny the exchange she had with Martin, the doc. She's like, first she's like, so, what are you doing back here? And he's like, oh, I'm sorry. Do I need to come back at a different time? I didn't realize I was in your way or something. And she's like, yes, in fact, you do. And the little thing, I'm like, it's not your office. It's his house. what are you doing? Like, that annoyed me a little bit, but it was so funny, the little exchange between each other. And then she's fussing at him because he's working, trying to find out what's wrong with Barry, when there's clearly nothing wrong with Barry in her eyes. And immediately she's whining and complaining that Al can't help her with her podcast reporting. He can't be the cameraman because he's got to help with the dunk tank. And she immediately says, without asking Martin, she says, "So that means you're going to be my cameraman tomorrow." And Martin being Martin, he's like, Dr. Best is like, "No, you got another thing coming to you because I'm not going to be a part of this silly little festival. I'm not going to be the judge. I'm not even showing up. I don't care." Once again, he's like, "I don't care. I just want to make sure that everyone is healthy and safe." And she immediately does what I was afraid she was going to do from the very beginning. In episode 1, we see she finds out that he has a blood phobia, and she offers to help him by being the phlebotomist, or whatever you call it, to take care of the blood so he doesn't have to deal with it. And in episode 2, when Bert cuts his hand, she helps him, but she makes a big scene about it. She's like, "See, I can be helpful." Like that, meaning, I know your secret, so you need me, pretty much. And what I was afraid of, she blackmails him pretty much. She was like, "I know a secret about you that no one else knows. I know this certain blood issue, and I do things that I don't want to do. I take blood just for you, and this," and he's like, "This is blackmail, right?" And she's like, "Oh, I know." And immediately you can tell he's bothered by her doing this because he hasn't told nobody about the blood phobia. And I think if it was up to him, the situation that happened in the Salty Breeze in episode 1, if he could have avoided Elaine, he would have been happy with that because he didn't even tell Louisa about it in episode 2. So, clearly he doesn't want anybody to know about this blood phobia thing. And with Elaine knowing this seems like it's a bad situation he's in. So, unfortunately, it looks like he gave in, and he is going to have to be Elaine's cameraman, which we will see how that goes. So we are now skipping ahead to the big Blueberry Festival day. And you see Elaine did drag the doc as being her cameraman, which was no surprise. I figured after the blackmail, her threatening him, he decided he better do what she wants, whether he likes it or not, because of the whole blood phobia situation. He doesn't want that business getting out there. So he's being her cameraman, but him being himself was just so hilarious. First of all, Brisket the pig was there. So, I talked about in last week's episode, we didn't really get to see Brisket after the whole unravel in episode 4 of Brisket being banned from the restaurant kitchen because Dr. Best got the restaurant shut down because of the pig being in the kitchen. But then later made some calls and made it a emotional support animal. And then I made the comment, I wonder how that will affect Brisket not being able to live in the restaurant. But it looks like they've taken care of that because Brisket's still around and joined the festivities. Now, I do want to say that maybe I was a little bit concerned with this being a blueberry festival and food being around and the pig being around. I was thinking, oh no, is this going to be a part 2 of health code violations because they're letting a pig run around food? But luckily that was not the case. It was not about the pig. It wasn't about Brisket. Brisket was just in one teeny tiny scene. And immediately we see the doc being annoyed, being himself, in Elaine's podcast live because she's like, "We're here at the Portland Blueberry Festival and we have women and men around us." And his little comments, he's like, "Oh really? So there's men and women here?" And she's like, "Just stop." He doesn't care that it's live and that he's not supposed to be talking. He's he's just giving her a hard time pretty much because, he doesn't want to be doing this. And then his little comment, oh, look, why don't you ask the pig its thoughts on this, about this blueberry festival, which I thought was so funny. And then, it's ironic that he would say that because every person she interviewed had nothing to say, which I kind of felt bad for her because, this live thing is like what she wants to do, and she's been like all hyped and excited for it. But at the same time, it's like so funny that it's backfiring. She asked the guy about how he's enjoying the experience, and he's like, okay. Like, all he says is okay. You have her asking the woman about the blueberry pie she made or whatever, and asked her if she's ever hit anybody with her rolling pin, which was so funny. And, the woman had like this look on her face, and she didn't answer the question, which is a little concerning. Don't know what that answer was going to be. Then you have her talking to the the younger people about what they were tasting or whatever, and neither one of them would answer her questions. They were just standing there awkwardly. And then she asks Irma if she's traveled from a long distance, and Irma's like, I'm Irma, meaning I live here. What are you talking about? And you can just tell that this whole live thing is backfiring, not going the way Elaine was planning it. And, she even asks Martin, Dr. Best, well, how many people are watching? And, he's like, how am I supposed to know, him being himself? And she's like, well, are you kidding me? How old are you? Like, how she is going back and forth. She's like, it's the number at the top. And, of course, only 2 people were watching. Al and some other person, which we don't know who that was. And then her mom tuned in. And, it's starting to hurt Elaine. She's like, are you kidding me? Nobody's watching my live. And, the doc makes the remark, well, it's not the moon landing or something like that. Not to mention everyone is here, meaning there's nobody. It seems like the only people watching her live stuff is the town, and they can't really be watching her live with them being there in person. They're not going to be on their phones while enjoying the festival. And you can tell that she's kind of getting a little discouraged and upset that she's realizing that it looks like the only people that are watching her live is the town and not other people from other places. And then, you can see her getting a little discouraged, and then immediately, everybody's cheering because Sheriff Mark is coming out, and she's like, immediately is like, okay, something interesting's happened, and she goes running towards the chaos. And then, the doc's like, are you kidding me? Why am I even doing this? And he goes with her. And the whole thing about the dunk tank cracked me up. Number one, the whole proceeds for the money that is being raised for this dunk tank is the Gel Black Mold Removal Fund, which is so funny to me that, but it makes sense, I guess. Small town, little donations help with little things like that. And then the fact that all of his exes came up to him, mad at him because he either sent a text or a voicemail, and even one person was upset because their mom found out, and they're just all giving him a hard time about the finding out that he may have gave this to them. And they took it out on him with the dunk tank. I mean, they all lined up, and, it was so funny. Elaine's comment was, oh, looks like that everybody is really adamant about getting the funds for the, black mold removal, when that is not the case. They are wanting to get Mark back so bad, because of what he humiliated them. And, one of the ladies finally throws the ball and does dunk him. Then Louisa to the rescue. I think she could tell that he had an angry mob against him, and she was like, okay, that's enough. And he was like, oh, did that embarrass you or something like that? And she was like, yeah, a little bit. So that was nice that Louisa came to his rescue. I don't know if she really knew what the whole situation was, but the fact that she came to the rescue was nice. And we are now to the time that we've all been waiting for. You hear Bert give the announcement that the judges have tried the pies and they are ready to give the results. And the funny thing was, he was like, come on in, come on in. Then he's like, I'm sorry, like a few people came, I'm sorry, we're to capacity, which I thought was so funny because the whole situation with that, that they can only have so many people, and it's, everybody is ready to know this, like this is a big deal, and the fact that everyone can't fit in the room is just so ironic. And of course Elaine is the front of the line of that, and the doc's comment about, oh great, all snug in this tiny room or whatever with all these people in a fire hazard, meaning he was not looking forward to being in that crowd. And this blueberry festival this blueberry pie contest was something else. A lot of drama was unraveled, a lot of action. So we get to the pie, the moment we've all been waiting for, who won the pie contest. And a lot is going on in this. I mean, we see that Elaine is kind of being affected by the fact that nobody is watching her live, just her mom. And, you can tell that it's kind of bothering her because she kind of stutters with her words, doesn't know what to say. She's kind of in a panic. And, that's just a side of her that we've not seen when it comes to her social media. It seems like she's always composed and knows the things to say. So we got that going on. We have the fact that everyone is reacting in their own ways about whether they have won or not. You have Greg freaking out, just having like a panic attack, which we need to go back to the salty breeze whenever he burns his hand in the kitchen. And the fact that when the doc was wrapping up his hand, he was like, you can't wrap it up too tight. I gotta be baking pies tomorrow. Like, this is my chance. And, the doc's like, no, do you hear yourself right now? You're having a nervous breakdown. And even George is like, you need to calm down. Like, you're making a big deal of something that's not. And, finally we realize this is a huge deal to Greg. Like, everyone else has their own reasons. This is a big deal to Greg because he feels like nobody appreciates him for what he does. Like, he's like, I'm only known as the money guy. That everybody praises George for his lobster bisque and the, like, lobster rolls and the lobster bisque. Like, George is known for his food, and Greg feels like he's not known for anything. And I think George is finally seeing that this is a huge deal to him as well. And, so this is a big deal for all of these. Everybody has their own reasons. So we did see that. And the funny part was another spit blueberry, and it hits Greg, and then the pie goes into the doc's face. Was funny. So we got to see, that's why Greg is freaking out when they're getting ready to read the results, is because he wants to prove that he can be as good as George at certain things. Then you have Louisa panicking, kind of, she's holding her hands like this, and Martin's comment, Louisa, you're cutting the circulation out of your fingers. And, immediately she's like, well, this is a big deal to me. I've always placed third, and I really want to do good. And, she comes back at him, and clearly you don't care. And, I think he realizes that what he said to her really did hurt her a while. And, he's trying to say, well, no, I didn't mean what. And then he gets cut off, of course, because they're getting ready to read the results. So, Louisa has her own reason of wanting to win the pie contest, is to prove that she's not the heartbreaker of the town, that she wants to prove that she can do other things and be known for other things. Then you have Sally Milo. Her goal is she just wants second place. We saw the part where at the pharmacy, Aunt Sarah asks her what this little spot's for, and she said, oh, for my trophy that I'll win. So clearly, she just wants to win because she wins every year. Then you have Blueberry. His objective, the whole reason he does what he does is because he feels like every year when he goes to this event that nobody judges him. He's the mascot of the town, and everybody loves him for who he is, doesn't care about his issues. So that's why he wants to win, pretty much. So now that we see why everybody wants to win, we immediately learn the results. So for third place, we see that Greg wins for the best pie. He gets third place, and everyone's shocked, which is so funny because apparently he says he's never won, and it really bothers him. He would like at least an honorable mention or something. So he gets third place, and the comment Elaine makes is, with an upsetting third place, Greg wins. I just thought that was so funny on the live. So he gets third. In second place, Sally wins, which is no surpriser. It sounds like she gets second place every year. And, Elaine even says, Mom, you're right. Sally got second, as always. And, we see Louisa getting really excited. She's like, okay, I always get third. I always get third. And then you start to see Martin kind of looking. I think he realizes, yes, this means a lot to her. And he's starting to realize maybe he's hurt her by what he has said when he didn't mean what he said. And, unfortunately, Louisa does not win first. Blueberry wins first. And it's no surpriser because it sounds like he wins first every year. And, Louisa's kind of sad, and you can tell Martin knows he's sad. But then things start to turn because the person that announces the first place winner is Aunt Sarah. And immediately Aunt Sarah just passes out. So we immediately see when that happens, Martin doesn't skip a beat. I've made the comment that whenever there's a situation with Louisa, he kind of changes his bedside manner. Like he's more caring and more caring and compassion towards her. And you see that with his Aunt Sarah. She immediately passes out, falls backwards, and he goes run. He doesn't skip a beat. He goes running to her. And so I'm immediately like, oh no, is Aunt Sarah okay? What is going on? What could have caused this? And immediately I think it's something Barry has put in his pie. I thought, oh, maybe whatever that's cream or whatever that is he's using, I thought it was a clue that maybe that got in the pie, which affected Aunt Sarah. And then I'm like, but then again, why has no one else been affected? So all these things were processing in my mind. And we immediately see that Dr. Best is trying to get to the bottom of this. He was asking, okay, what was the last pie she ate? And it turned out to be Sally's pie. And then things just went crazy from there. So he's like, I need to know what's in your pie. And she's like naming all of these ingredients. And then she's like, well, there's one secret ingredient. Do I have to tell? And the town's like, yes, you have to tell. And it was an illegal ingredient. It was MSG, which apparently, according to the rules of the pie contest, you can't use unorganic homemade ingredients. So she immediately got disqualified. And the fact that with all of this going on, Aunt Sarah is passed out, has a low heart rate, she's not okay. Everyone is worried about who is getting the trophies and stuff. They're like, oh, she's disqualified, then whose pie's next? And I'm like, it's not the time for the pies. We need to focus on Aunt Sarah. Aunt Sarah is laying here passed out. Something is clearly wrong with her, and it sounds like it's something that was in one of y'all's pies. So, Sally is immediately eliminated, which puts Louisa in second place. And, Greg gets put in second place because Sally was eliminated. So now he's excited because he's in second place. And then, Martin was like, okay, what pie did she eat next? Because he was annoyed that they were talking about who got second place next. And the next pie that she ate was Louisa's pie. And the next pie she ate was Barry's pie. And Barry's pie turned out to be not homemade. It turned out to be a store-bought pie, which made him get eliminated because you can't use non-homemade pies, and he kind of got upset because in his eyes, the whole reason he was doing this was because he was the blueberry mascot and he felt like he fit in. And, Martin's getting annoyed. He's like, I don't care if you made this pie in the kitchen or if you got it from the dumpster out back. My aunt's health is all I care about, and I need to know what was in your pie. He's just getting very frustrated with them because they're not answering the questions. And then, we learned that it was a store-bought pie, so he was eliminated, which then I think that's when it was Greg becomes second place, or Greg becomes first place, and Louisa then gets second place because so far everybody else has been disqualified. And then we learned that they learned that the whole reason that Barry is blue is because he was taking the dermatologist cream that he was prescribed when he was in high school was to help with his acne, and he became not addicted, but he just kept, because they were praising him for being blue and calling him the mascot every year, he just kept putting it on every year, when you're only supposed to use it for, I think Martin said 2 months, which then overuse causes you to turn blue, which is why he is blue. So that solved that problem. And Martin's like, you need to really stop doing that. You're overusing the cream and it's not good for your health. So we learn the mystery behind why the guy's blue. So back to the whole Aunt Sarah thing. We know that it's not Sally's pie, and we know it's not Blueberry's pie. So the next pie we have is Louisa's. I don't know if they ever asked Greg about his pie. I think they do, and he says that it's all homemade or something like that. But then they ask Louisa about her pie, and she's like, "Oh, it's homemade, and everything's organic. I don't cheat." And then it turns out he's like, "Well, Martin's like, well, what's the secret ingredient or whatever you were going to do?" And she ended up soaking her blueberries in spinach water overnight, which ended up being the factor of why Aunt Sarah passes out, because we find out at the beginning of the whole thing when Martin's at Aunt Sarah's house, she can't eat spinach because it interferes with her blood pressure medicine or blood thinner medicine that will cause her to pass out. So without knowing, which we need to back up to the part where Aunt Sarah is at the pharmacy with to get her prescription from Sally, and she finds out that the medication is going to be $100 and some, and she's like, "That's too expensive. I can't pay that." So she immediately tells Sally she doesn't want it. She wants her old prescription, and Sally makes the comment, "Well, do you want to call Dr. Best to make sure that's okay?" And, she makes the comment, "No, me and him are not on speaking terms right now. He doesn't need to know about my medical business." So he doesn't even know that she's still taking her old medicine, which then that unravels that. And, even Sally, because it's Sally, she's like, "Yeah, I told her we should have called you and let you know." And, clearly he doesn't care about that. Now that he knows what the source of the problem is, he can diagnose her and help her. So it turned out she just needed some kind of epinephrine or something like that, something to counteract the reaction or response she had. So they're waiting on the ambulance. And so it was the spinach and Louisa's from the spinach water that the blueberries were in. But thankfully, it may have been the cause of Aunt Sarah's accident, but it was nothing illegal where Louisa had to get disqualified from the competition. So we think that all of that has been solved. What a chaotic blueberry pie contest it was this year. And we see Aunt Sarah getting taken to the ambulance. And then we learn that Greg may have cheated as well. Greg ended up having made a deal with George. No, Greg made a deal with Bert that George would cook him his favorites for like 2 months or something if he won, so to speak. And when George found out, he was not happy, and he immediately said, "You're disqualified, Greg. I cannot believe you." So that immediately made Louisa the winner. She got her blue crown after all that she wanted, the knitted crown. And the fact that at the end that Martin immediately like stops when he's finding out this is all going on, he starts cheering and clapping and going, "Woo!" was just so, I just thought that was a touching moment that he would act like that despite not really caring about the town festivities, but because it's Louisa, he ended up showing love and compassion. So I just thought that was a sweet moment. And then the fact that Louisa came running after she got it, and the fact that, Louisa being Louisa, she's like, "We got to get your aunt to the hospital." And he's like, "No, you stay here." And then she hugged him. And the moment they kissed, I was so happy. I was like, yes, they finally kissed. I was just so happy. Now, he had like a smile on his face, and she had like a panicked look on his face. So I'm thinking, did she regret doing that? Like, was it a split? Is it because they were in public? I don't really know. Was she not ready? I don't know. But, like, I was like, they finally kissed. Finally. I was so happy about that. And, that was that. Louisa ends up getting the prize trophy and the hat, and Dr. Best goes to check on Aunt Sarah. And thank goodness Aunt Sarah was okay. Wasn't too life-threatening, and, there was... Martin kind of got after her about not telling him that she didn't get the new prescription. She was using the old prescription still. And, he was very worried about her. You could tell he was. And it was hard for him to admit it. And, she was like, "Were you worried? Be honest. Were you worried about me?" And, he was worried. And the fact he had to be himself, because he can't be in those heartfelt moments. He's like, "Of course I was worried about you. I couldn't see myself in this stupid town without you." I just thought that was so funny. I mean, he really does care, but at the same time, he can't show that. So he has to say it in his own little way. And I thought it was sweet that he kind of, in a way, apologized to her because, she was explaining how she was very upset with him, that she thought he was going to eat lunch with her, not be a doctor's visit. And that she really was looking forward to having a lunchtime with him. And the fact that he brought the stethoscope and was in doctor mode really upset her. And, he finally was like, "Yeah, I understand." He finally admitted he understood that she just wants to spend more time with him because of the time they lost from the whole situation of him not being there since childhood for whatever. We don't know the circumstances. We just know that he left, and the only way of contact was a birthday card. Him sending a Christmas card every year. So they didn't really talk until he came back. And then I thought it was nice of him to say that he may not have judged the blueberry pie contest with her, but that doesn't mean that he can't put aside having a lunch date with her every week, which I thought was nice of him, sweet of him, to show that he does care about her. And the fact that he even made it 2 days a week is super sweet of him to do that. And I did find also had to bring a twist of Martin into it, because it's not Martin without his little funny short responses. He says that, "But you cannot have fried fish anymore. You have to walk 10,000 steps a day after we eat lunch." And she's like, 10,000 steps. So, he may be considerate of eating lunch with her, but still, as her doctor, he is making sure that she stays healthy. And the fact that at the end, that when the nurse comes in and says, "Anybody want ice cream for dessert?" and he doesn't skip a beat, he gets up, walks to the door, says, no. And he slams the door. It was just so funny, and the look on her face when she was just shaking her head. I'm like, that's Martin right there. He is going to make sure that you stay healthy and you follow your diet because he does not want this to happen to you again. So that was a little recap of episode 6. I think we covered everything. Oh, I do want to go back to, I did not talk about the fact that when Sheriff Mark has to go take the prescription to the pharmacist, and, he's not looking forward to it whatsoever because it's his mom, of course. And the fact that he's trying to get, like, this past person that he's dealt with before, a lawbreaker, trying to get them to take the prescription for him. And they're even like, but it has your name on it, dude. She's going to know who you are. She's your mother. And it's just so funny. It's like nobody understood that he was embarrassed that he was going to have to, like, share something with his mom. He didn't want her to know about this. And the fact that in the end he's trying to disguise his face as her and Aunt Sarah are having a conversation, and he puts sunglasses on and he's like acting all cool. And then, of course, what she does is reads the prescription. And she immediately jumps to, did Louisa do this to you? And then immediately he's like, no. And, Aunt Sarah's like, kind of like wishing she's not in the conversation. But then again, she's all in the conversation because it's a small town. And then he tells them what it is. And the funny thing is, they're like, really? That's all it is? That's not a big deal. Everybody gets it. And the fact that they were comforting him and saying it was okay that he got that was just so funny to me. In the end, the mom didn't care. She was like, I'm proud of you in a way. I'm like, okay, that another turn. Didn't see that coming. So that was a funny scene too, the whole thing of him scared to share with his mom the situation, and then it turns out she didn't care. She was proud of him in a way. It was so funny. So we didn't talk about that. I had to go back and talk about that. But that is the recap of episode 6. Now I'm going to share my thoughts of overall about this episode. So my overall thoughts for this episode is, I would say this was one of my favorite episodes. It's right up there with the past few that we have seen. I think that they are really getting better and better. And I would say that this episode for me will be categorized as more of a comedic episode once again, rather than a dramatic episode. Now, don't get me wrong, there was a few heartfelt things here and there once again, but overall, I would say it was more of a funny episode, comedic for me, like episode 5, last week's episode, whereas episode 4 was more dramatic, heartwarming, pulled at my heartstrings kind of way. So that's my overall thoughts of the episode. Is I really enjoyed it. Think it would be one of my favorites. What I liked about the episode is I think that there was a little bit of a different pattern of the episode. What am I saying by that? I think that we got to see a little bit more of the town and it being in the dock more chill. And what I mean by that is in every episode there seemed to be that one person that he has his mind on, and he's going to do whatever it takes to make that person better. He's going to solve their problems. Episode 1, I can't really say like that because it was more of a introduction episode. Get to know the characters, who is everybody, what is Portland about kind of episode. You were getting a feel for what this show was going to be about. And yeah, we had the affair, the woman that was cheating on her husband with the young guy, and that whole thing unraveled. But I would say episodes 2 is when we started to see that pattern because, the foodborne illness thing. No. Episode 2 was the brown moth thing. The rash. He shut down the bean supper because of worried about the health problems of the town, didn't really care what their thoughts were. His mind, everybody was getting this rash, everybody was getting sick, he needed to get to the bottom of it, and it turned out being Glendon's renovations. So that whole scenario, he made the town mad because he shut down their supper. Episode 3, the main objective was to find out what is wrong with the Glendon Jr. kid. He shouldn't have his bones being broken that easily. Yeah, he's the one that caused him to break his arm, but in his mind, he knew that that wasn't his fault. He basically ruined the game for them, made them mad at him because he ruined the game because the star player was out of the game. So the whole thing that made the town mad was him breaking the kid's arm, getting him out of the game. And the focus was the kid. Episode 4, the focus was there was 2 focuses. What is causing the food it was the main focus was the food outbreak. What's causing the foodborne illness? Why is everybody getting sick? And of course, he made the town mad because he shut down the Salty Breeze, said it was from them. And that caused friction with the town because he closed their beloved restaurant down. And it turned out it was the school. And in the end, it was just people that went to the school that was getting sick. And then last week's episode, the whole thing was, gotta find out what's wrong with Joe. Why won't Joe take his medicine? And the town's all upset with him for getting the power shut off. And so we have that as the friction between him and the town. So in each episode, there's been a main cause for concern. That one patient he wants to help get better. But in doing that, he is messing things up for the town, causing things to be closed and this and that, making the town upset. But in the end, he does fix the problem. He does make the person better. And he ends up making the town kind of happy with him again. Has been the whole kind of tone for each episode. And this week's episode, with that being said, and what I'm trying to get my point across is, in this episode of this week, I didn't feel like that was the plot line twist for this episode. Yes, there was a guy that was blue, and yes, the doc was concerned and wanted to figure out what is wrong with this person. Why is he blue? Wants to fix the problem. But at the same time, he didn't shut down the Blueberry Festival. He didn't confront this guy and make this guy upset and, upset with him. He just kind of did some digging, and at the end, it was revealed that it was because he was taking the dermatologist cream. So it was just like a different set pace. It was more of him, whether he liked it or not, he was enjoying the festivities of the town. He was enjoying the festival for once, being Elaine's cameraman, whether he liked it or not, he was there. And it was just a nice changed tone, a nice change scenario. It was just nice and of a change, in my opinion, that we got to see a different side of Portland, more of the town coming together and not mad at Martin for once, Dr. Best for once. So that's one thing I liked about this episode. I do want to say about the characters. I was a little mad at Elaine for using blackmail against the doc, bringing Dr. Best's blood phobia up and saying that basically if he didn't help her with the camera duties, that she would tell people that he has this issue. And, I was not happy about that whatsoever. I thought for sure that she wouldn't be that mean, that person. I felt that she didn't really care about that she had a secret. All she cares about is herself. And in a way, I guess that's still the case, because in her mind, she has to do this podcast. She can't get nobody to be the cameraman. So if I have to use blackmail on the doc, I'll use blackmail on the doc if I can get my live shots for my show. I think that's all she cared about. And then, I did kind of feel for her when she's realizing that nobody watches her show but the town. And, that does kind of gotta hurt a little bit. That's the fact that she thought that she had other people from other places watching her work, and it was just the town all along. So that was a little sad, but I am, for the most part, infuriated with her that she blackmailed the doc into helping her. I love the development as always, the banter between Aunt Sarah and Martin, Dr. Best. in the end, he realizes that she just wants to make up for lost time that they didn't have together and just wants to have lunch with him every now and then, and that he needs to put the stethoscope aside and be her nephew for every once in a while. It's okay to be the town doctor every now and then, but you need to enjoy time with your aunt. And although it took a medical crisis for him to realize that, her nearly passing, she literally passed out from taking old medication when she's supposed to be taking new medication due to the conflict of spinach and her medicine. It took that horrible thing to happen for him to realize that, but in the end, it looks like he's going to be more compassionate with and spend time with her like she wants. And of course, we got to talk about the whole Martin and Louisa, Dr. Best and Louisa situation. The fact that they finally kissed. I was super happy and excited about that. I was like, yes, they kissed. I was just so happy. And I hope that wasn't a regretful thing, like an accident, and Louisa kind of distances herself from Martin because of that situation. I hope that they continue to kind of talk. Maybe things get serious. Time will tell. And the fact Elaine and Al, we got to see them kind of connecting. Al was going to be her cameraman, but then couldn't be because he had to do the dunk tank last minute. So still, I was hoping to see a little bit more of them connect because I want them to become a couple, but I guess you can't rush things. Maybe it'll be like the Martin and Louisa thing where it'll start to progress, hopefully, within the next couple of episodes. And then let's talk about Sheriff Mark. The fact that he I don't know. I was talking about how last week his character was becoming not as annoying to me because he finally shared his thoughts and emotions with Louisa, and I was like, oh, finally, it's going to come to a close. He's going to heal. They're going to become friends. He's going to quit being this quirky, annoying character. And then I feel like this week, maybe he was still kind of annoying. Not as bad. It was toned back a little bit, but I'm hoping that will continue, that he becomes a different tone of a character. And it was funny that his little banter with the doc when the doc said, why don't you let me do the diagnosis and you continue to be an idiot. Just that comment just was so funny to me. He's just not a fan of the sheriff whatsoever, but the sheriff wants to be his friend. And I think that's all that I need to cover. Oh, I do want to point out the Sally Milo thing, the comment she had with Aunt Sarah when Aunt Sarah was complaining that Martin is not being her nephew. He was being a doctor for lunch. So she didn't get to have the time she wanted with him, and the comment she made, he brought his stethoscope with him, and the comment Sally said was, was it cold on the skin? I bet Dr. Best's hands were warm. And, Aunt Sarah's like, stop, Sally. That's my nephew. I'm like, she has a thing for the doc. And we're slowly getting to see that. And it's just so funny that she's just not letting these comments hold her back. She's speaking from the mind like everyone else in this town is. And so that was funny. I did have to bring that up. There was a few little things here and there that the doc would say that was hilarious to me, like whenever Greg was having the nervous breakdown and George is like, can you give him a sedative? And then the doc's like, everyone in this town needs a sedative. And the fact that he was talking about how when Elaine said that this is a big deal, the Blueberry Festival, and he's like, this town would have a parade for a stoplight being put up. Like, he's just done with the foolishness of this town. He thinks everything they do is silly. But yeah, there was just little comments here and there that made me laugh, like last week. I don't know if I've caught them all, but that was just the ones I remember. And I do want to point out that despite the Blueberry Festival looking silly, I can kind of relate to it because every year in the summertime of July, my city of Lenoir in North Carolina has the annual Blackberry Festival, the North Carolina Blackberry Festival. And it's a whole weekend thing that is, it's Friday, Saturday. I think it's just Fridays and Friday evenings and the whole day Saturday. And the whole downtown's blocked off. And there's a parade. There's a pie eating contest. Like, there's vendors. It's everything. So I can kind of relate to the Blueberry Festival because we do have the Blackberry Festival every year. It's not as, I wouldn't say it is as serious and silly as the Blueberry Festival was in Port Wynne. But the fact that I could relate to that was pretty funny. I'm like, that's like our Blackberry Festival. When the doc was like, really? You do this and this every year? I'm like, yeah, that's us. In July, we have that Blackberry Festival. So did want to throw that out there that I can kind of relate to that episode. So yeah, I hope everyone enjoyed my reaction and my review of this week's episode of Best Medicine. And if you're curious to see my thoughts for other episodes or previous episodes, you can check out my playlist of the recap from episode 5 to 1. And then this one will be on there. And then if you're curious to see what my future thoughts are, you can catch me every week with a new reaction video. I try to post them every Thursday. And yeah, I hope everybody enjoyed this video. I hope you enjoyed episode 6 as much as I did. We're quickly getting through these episodes. Like I said, we're a little over halfway there through the season, which is kind of bittersweet. I'm excited to see things progress, but at the same time, whenever it's finales, we're gonna have to wait for a season 2, and I hope they renew for a season 2. But yeah, hope you enjoyed this video as much as I enjoyed sharing with you guys this week. And I continue to enjoy watching each week and sharing my thoughts with you guys. And I will see you guys next week with a new episode / reaction. And this is the part of the video where if you're a Doc Martin fan like myself and you're curious to see my thoughts of comparison of Best Medicine and Doc Martin, let's talk about it. If you just watch Best Medicine and you have not seen Doc Martin yet, this is where we say goodbye, and I will see you again next week. Take care. So hello everyone. If you made it to this part of the video, that means that you are a Doc Martin fan like myself, and you may or may not be enjoying Best Medicine. I personally am enjoying Best Medicine so far. I'm becoming a huge fan, and I'm so happy that Fox made a show. I will say that as we watch more and more and more, I can tell that it is not our beloved Doc Martin. There is a lot of different things. They may be taking plotline and ideas from the original, but it is nothing compared to our Doc Martin. Not in a negative way. It's just, I'm happy that we can put it on a separate shelf as not being our beloved Doc Martin. Nothing can replace Port Wynne, Cornwall, Martin Clunes as our Doc Martin Elliam, and all of the characters that played in the original. That will forever be in my heart. But I am loving and enjoying the new Port Wynne of the U.S., so to speak. So let's dive in. I do want to say, I pointed out at the beginning, if you watched my reaction to Best Medicine segment, this episode I was really pleased with because it had nothing to do with Doc Martin. Well, number one, I didn't say this in that segment, but this had nothing to do with Doc Martin whatsoever. There was no Blueberry Festival. There was no blue guy. There was nothing like that. And the fact that I also want to say that they didn't really take any plot lines from Doc Martin. Like, there was little things, if you're a huge fan, like myself, you might have caught on to, but nothing that would give the episode away whatsoever. And I love for once that there wasn't, okay, this person is the person I'm going to focus on in the episode, help them get better, and if I make the town upset along the way, so be it. That was not in this episode whatsoever. The town never got upset with him because he didn't shut down the Blueberry Festival like he did, and the baked bean supper, he shut it down because of the rash going around. He wouldn't let the star player in the baseball game play because he was injured, made them upset. He shut down the Salty Breeze because of the whole sanitation issue, thinking that was where the foodborne illness was coming from, made them upset. He got the power shut off last week because Joe wouldn't take his medicine, made the town upset. So for once, it was nothing. He didn't do anything to make the town hate him, pretty much. They got to have their Blueberry Festival. Now, also, yes, was he seriously concerned about this blueberry guy wanting to know why he was blue? Absolutely. But he didn't for once confront the guy, annoy him, make him mad like everyone else in past episodes. He just kind of did some snooping around, research, and later, brought it up when the time was right, I guess. Unfortunately, it was when Aunt Sarah passed out, but, in the end, I thought this was a good different solution scenario tone for this episode. You got to see Portland more. You got to see the characters more. It wasn't a predictable outcome like past episodes. Not saying I didn't enjoy that. I'm not saying that ever whatsoever. I enjoyed every episode. Each episode, in my opinion, is getting better. Now, in similarities, this is where I'm starting to see a little bit, as a Doc Martin fan, did see a little things here and there. Oh, they took the idea from this. The spitball, when they were spitballing the blueberries at Dr. Best in the R version, reminded me of the kid with the spitballs that was sick that Aunt Joan shoved in the cage, I think it was. Yeah, she shoved him in the cage. They had a lawsuit against him, or against her. The parents had a lawsuit against Aunt Joan saying that her shoving him in the chicken cage is what made him sick. And, he was doing spitballs at the Doc Martin in the original when he went to visit and check on him. So, similarity here and there. They each were getting spitballs by bratty kids. Shocker, shocker. Another similarity is, I think I could seriously compare Aunt Sarah to both Aunt Ruth and Aunt Joan, in the sense that they don't want to come to their nephews when they have like a health problem. They just want them to be there for them as their nephew. Aunt Sarah wouldn't come for her yearly checkup because of the Blueberry Festival, and she was very upset with Dr. Best, for even thinking about doing a checkup at her house when she wanted to spend time with him and have lunch with him. And, he finds out that she has, high blood pressure, she's on blood thinners, she has osteoporosis, and he's just giving her a lecture. And, she wasn't happy with him. She wanted him to be there as her nephew so they could have, a conversation as aunt and nephew and enjoy a lunch together. Similarities with the original, where Joan doesn't want Martin Elliam to know that she hurt her knee or whatever, and turns out she had osteoporosis and whatever. She was upset with him having a fuss over her. And then the fact that, and when it was Aunt Ruth thought she was dying and didn't want to come to Martin when she first was there. She had the bleeding gums and stuff like that, and I think she thought she had, I don't even remember what she thought she had, but it didn't turn out that, and Doc Martin, diagnosed her with something else, and it wasn't life-threatening. But I can see where, and I was putting that 2 and 2 together, that when it comes to their relationship with the Martins, there's certain times they just want them to be their nephews. And then, how did I forget this? When Louisa and Martin, Dr. Best, kissed on our version, I was so happy whenever, he was excited that happy for her when she won the blueberry pie contest after all the rigmarole that went on. It reminded me of when Louisa and Martin kissed in season it was series 1, the last episode, episode 6. They were in the back of the taxi whenever, at least, I think this is the first time they kissed. This is when I remember they kissed. They're in the back of the taxi whenever, they had came back from the hospital where the Peter Cronk emergency was, and they just end up kissing in the back seat. And I was happy for that moment because, I was like, finally they're kissing. And then, Martin Elliam messes it up because he's like asking her about her breath, said she had bad breath because she hadn't brushed her teeth, which clearly they had been at the hospital overnight. But that reminded me of, I was just as excited when they kissed in that scene as I was in the original when Martin and Louisa kissed at the Blueberry Festival. Now, he didn't say anything to mess it up like the other Martin did, so we will see how their relationship progresses. But yeah, that I was very excited about that too. But yeah, I think I've covered all the things that kind of related to one another. Like I said, there wasn't that many things that were copycats this week. I wouldn't even say copycat. I would say ideas taken from the original. There wasn't many things like that taken from that for our version this week. And the fact that I'm happy that each episode I'm getting to enjoy more and more because I'm not able to predict what is going to happen because they are kind of shying away from directly making the outcome be the same as the original, which I'm super happy about. But yeah, that is my thoughts as a Doc Martin fan of this week's episode of Best Medicine. We're almost halfway through the season. I mean, we kind of are. There's 13 episodes. We're getting ready to be on episode 7 next week. That means we're 3 episodes away of seeing the beloved Martin Clunes playing Dr. Best's father, Dr. Robert Best, which I'm super excited about. I'm looking forward to seeing Martin Clunes on our screens once again. Curious to see, like I said, how his character will evolve. Will it be the same Doc Martin Elliam that we grow to learn and love and learn from? Will he have the same demeanor for this character, or will it be a little different? I'm curious to see how Martin Clunes will play this character. But with that is in the future. We have 3 episodes to wait for that to happen. But yeah, hope everybody enjoyed this video. And if you're curious to see my thoughts about episodes in the past, I have a playlist where I did the same thing, comparing the two. And if you're curious to see my thoughts for next week's episode and episodes to come, please just turn that notification bell on, and it'll let you know every time I upload. I try to upload every week. I try to upload on Thursdays is when you'll most likely find my videos. But yeah, I hope everybody enjoyed this video. Please like, comment, and subscribe. Also, like I said, turn that notification bell on if you're curious when my next video will be uploaded, so you don't miss any time I upload. And I will see you guys next week with another reaction video. Take care.